in some ways, what I came to the conclusion is it's the career of last resort in some ways because it is so hard. And, the fail rate and the numbers of people that I've recruited into the business and to see who remains. But the people that remain are so vastly grown. You're such a different person when you go through that process.
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more months than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day, and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Ken Stearns. Ken is a writer, podcast creator, and host, lyricist, photographer. Ken is a well-traveled and seasoned Midwestern kid who is beginning his third act in life for others and most importantly, himself. Ken traded in his suit for a van, a mic, and some questions, and more than a year later into his journey, it has given him so much more than he could imagine. Ken has had over 300 guests walking through the most intimate questions about their views on life with all their stories of human tragedy, overcoming life, and finding our ways as humans. Ken's own story of risking all he had saved and built to chase his own dreams is inspiring. Ken, prior to his news venture, had a great career as an insurance executive in Asia, which gave him so many great life experiences to draw from. Ken is also the author of a book titled Dear God, Letters to God. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Ken. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Right. Thanks for so strange hearing your own bio sometimes, and also getting a giggle out of it, but also a little bit of awe sometimes. Forgetting that I've done 300 interviews since I started, and like you said, the stuff that I've picked up and learned, and how it's changed me, affected me.
Oh yeah, for the listeners, they know that I put quite a bit of prep into my shows, and I was reading through, like I mentioned to you prior to recorded your website. I was looking out even your bio on Barnes and Noble for your book, and I was just doing some research on you. And then I took bits and pieces from different places to write the bio, and then I'm more connected to you.
Yeah.
Even before we talked today, I was more connected, and then I have a level of excitement. And then when I say the bio, that excitement comes out of it because I'm excited to have the people on that I get to choose who's on my show, right? So
yeah,
I only select the coolest people. You know that, right, Ken?
Oh, I love that. I love that. I'm part of a cool group.
Yeah, you're part of the cool kids, right? Like I said in your bio, you're a Midwestern kid, a seasoned Midwestern kid.
I like the season part, just kind of, it's a colloquialism. It's a nice euphemism for I'm older.
Well, when people say to me, especially when people say my grandkids, you're old, Papa. No, I'm seasoned. And then I use it all the time. I swear to you, for more than 20 years, I even say that to adults. They'll go, well, how old are you? No, how seasoned am I? What do you mean? I'm not old. I'm seasoned. I'm like a fine wine. All right.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. So, Ken, one of the things I like to focus on is a person's origin story, right? A lot of times on podcasts, people will just ask, what's your back end story? And Ken will start from the time he was old enough to start drinking, right? At around 11, 12.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what your origin story is, because I find that it helps the listeners, the viewers, know, like, and trust you quicker, right? Just by showing some vulnerability. So your earliest recollections that you feel comfortable sharing. Maybe you got a story that you've never shared with somebody before and you would like to share it. But I'd love to know your origin story, the key things from your childhood, your earliest recollections to adulthood that led you to where you're at currently, please.
Yeah, and I think those are inside those stories, right? Those memories are some clues as to who you're going to be, right? The kind of person, the things you're going to do. You can look back and there's threads. Um, my parents were the greatest generation. They were older. My dad was 50 when I was born. So I was the last of about 10 kids for him. And, he was a manager at the Cadillac factory in Detroit, saw the last cars come off before they started making tanks. Then he helped make tanks for a few years for the war effort. And then, was there when they rolled cars off and they started production back up. And that's where he met my mom. And so these are some solid, and we were initially supposed to land from Europe somewhere in the U.S., but the U.S. is full, so we ended up in Muddy Flats, which is Ontario now. We fought in the French and Canadian War, so we fought as French Canadians against the Americans in French Canadian American War.
They're
And then somehow
kindred spirit.
a little bit kindred spirit, and then somehow we ended up becoming Americans anyway. At the end, I don't know. They moved the border, or they moved over. Who knows what? But I've
So you
got that.
betrayed us Canadians.
Yeah, I'm kind of a traitor. I'm a little bit of a traitor Canadian.
Oh my goodness, this is fun.
And and I think some of that spirit, right? Of what kind of maniacs get in a boat and jump and go across the ocean, this old wooden crickety boat based on a sales brochure, and land in America, and that takes a certain kind of genetic makeup. I've got this kind of go west thing. And I think growing up, we traveled a lot by car. We saw a lot. My dad was a pretty adventurous person. So for me to end up in school outside of Chicago and then move to California, all kind of normal behaviors, I would guess. And those early recollections, idyllic childhood looking back, especially Dwight, juxtaposed against some of the stories I've heard on the jar of people growing up and the kind of environment they grew up in, and just being filled with gratitude of how, I got birth lottery, right? I hit the birth lotto. My parents weren't millionaires, but I grew up in a stable, loving home with a mom and a dad and brothers and sisters. Now, we're not all normal. And, it's one sister we don't talk to. And, we got all the normal human stuff, but nothing real traumatic in life for me growing up. And I think I'm really blessed from that. Now, for sure, I've got some, PTSD. I had older brothers. I had two older brothers and, all that good stuff. But we were kind of sports kids. And my dad was at the end, he was more of a general manager kind of executive person. And so, I wrote a song. One of the songs I wrote is called, Free Man. And it was when I got out of corporate life. It was me looking back on corporate life and how it was a prison in a way, and it was a self-determined prison. I signed my own contract. I signed my own life away into that corporate life. And I think it is, I look back and I am still that kind of a little bit of that rebel kid. I was the youngest, the goofiest. I say the most outrageous things sometimes without really thinking, even though I'm still 60 now and somehow survived executive life, still with those kind of traits. Somehow I got through it. So I've got, that I'm that kind of, I feel like I have some of that DNA of the Rolling Stone, and just to kind of keep moving and keep growing. And I honestly don't know where that came from. But certainly, when I was 40, I answered an ad to go overseas to take my insurance experience that they were looking for and to take it overseas. And, that's a really crazy thing to actually apply for when you think about it. And then even crazier is to jump on the plane and drag your family and do it. And so I think I've got that kind of spirit.
You got a tenacity, though. You got a spirit of, you're tenacious in the sense that, like, you've gone through a few things. Like, people that don't have, you don't even have to be you can be risk adverse in life, and they jump on that hamster wheel. Like you talked about, signing your life away, the Freeman song, right? You signed your life away. Well, isn't that most of society today? They go through life. They have learned behaviors from their family. As you mentioned, they don't necessarily talk to one another anymore as adults. You're part of a birth lottery. You don't appreciate what you've got. So you go through life and you get learned behavior that's either good, bad, indifferent, broken somewhere along the line between family members and your parents and your uncles, aunts, and all the influences, associations. You grow up to an adult, and we become squashed. We lose that ability to be risk takers, to be tenacious, to never back down, to go and take that risk. Like, what person, as you mentioned, 40, takes their family and moves to Asia? Like, that to me, it's one of the most sold things on people. They don't understand or have people recognize. Tenacity is a superpower. Being a risk taker is a superpower, right? And that's written all over you. Just from the little bit of story you shared.
Yeah, I do feel like it is a bit of a superpower. It's also can be, especially from sitting where I'm sitting now. I've done this a few times. Throwing when I left Asia, just 2 years ago, I figuratively, literally and figuratively threw my life out the window at 35,000 feet and let it shatter into a million pieces. And I wouldn't recommend that for everybody. And I don't know that I would do it the way I did it. Of course, hindsight's, a beautiful thing. But I left corporate, and I left insurance, and I left Asia, a place where I had the highest value. 20 years over there with the domain knowledge I had, the market experience. I mean, I had a lot of valuable information, a lot of valuable experience. And, I left that and I started a podcast, totally unrelated to insurance, totally unrelated to business, there's no relationship to anything that I had really done except communication and being close to people and listening and understanding. And I do think that was the one thing I carried into this career from the last career, was that human touch. But the rest of it, I really broke up into 1,000 pieces.
You know what, though? You mentioned the fact that hindsight is great. We wish we all had it. And you threw your life away at 35,000 feet, but honestly, you didn't, though, because our brain is a giant computer. It needs input. That's why people become stagnant. Then they have all these mental challenges and issues. Don't get me wrong. I struggle with certain things too, but I find the more I feed myself with associations of new data, new people, the more excited I become, the more times I've changed and pivoted, directions away from my initial careers. The better I feel, the less I feel like I'm trapped on that hamster wheel. And, so you can say that you might have made different decisions. We all think that. I look back and think, geez, I wish I would have made this decision with this career.
Sure.
I wish I would have made this decision with this kid. Maybe they would have turned out differently. All we can do is say to ourselves, as long as you can honestly look at yourself in the mirror and say, I did my best. I tried at everything that I tried. Like I get people that say, well, I'm a failure. I had to quit doing this and now I got to find something else. No. Did you learn anything from that journey?
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? Did you learn anything with what you went through? 1 year, 5 years, whatever. Well, yeah, I learned all this valuable information. So you learned all this valuable information, and the people in Asia may wish you had stayed there. But the thing that I keyed on, the communication factor, you didn't lose that people connection. I'm the same way. I love communicating with people. And I'm an introvert, so I only can take it in small doses. But
cool.
But I love talking to people on a one-on-one situation or a small group situation. I love hearing people's stories, and it's taught me over my career to be a better listener. So, one of the things that I would ask you, out of all the things today at 60 years of age, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Yeah,
that's naive and trying to make its place in this world, make his place, pardon me, in this world, what would you tell yourself? What would be the number one thing that you learned?
Yeah, and that's the conundrum there is probably change faster, do it more often, be more aggressive with your change.
I love that. That is such a great response. Be more
Right?
aggressive. Don't be afraid to step out because, anybody listening, and I do have younger listeners based on analytics, younger listeners that are listening to this, at the end of the day, you may think this sounds weird, but nothing is accomplished inside of your comfort zone.
Oh God.
Absolutely nothing, except maybe binge watching more television or having another beer or whatever the case may be. And I'm not judging people that do any of that, but they're in a comfort zone and they're accepted it. And maybe that's where they're comfortable. If you really want to achieve life, you have to step out of your comfort zone. You have to be, like Ken just said, you just got to change quicker.
Yeah, I wish I was probably the first clue that I was not normal was my second year in accounting. I graduated with a degree in accounting, and I had a great job in accounting manager role. And man, I was like, I was set. Like my whole life, I could see my whole life mapped out. I was the accounting manager. And then I was going to be, I was managing 3 payroll people, 3 payables people, 3 receivables people. And I reported to the CFO and ultimately I'd be the CFO somewhere. I mean, I could just see like, that's who I'll be. I'll be a CFO. That's my career path. And then I could see the CFO talks to the CEO and also the salesperson talks to the CEO. So the 2 people in charge really is you're either going to be the CFO or you're going to be the sales guy. And I wrote a check one day to the salesperson. I was doing commissions in this role, and I wrote a commission check that was bigger than my salary. And I didn't have a ton of respect for this person. I wasn't super impressed with this person. And I thought, man, and I just was filled with panic. My wife was pregnant with 3 months with our daughter, our first kid, just married, 3 months pregnant. And I just quit my job for a sales job. I just found the rankiest, dankiest sales job and I quit. I took a 60% pay cut, lost my health insurance, and started a sales job with the fantasies that I was going to make more money. And of course, I got fired after 6 months. I was about broke as I could be, took another job, failed at that job, took another sales job. That job blew up until I found the career of last resort, which is insurance. So I knew I was not normal at about 26, 27 when I hit the panic button and bailed on my finance career and started selling copiers and calculators door to door in LA, and office supplies that was about a 2 or 3 year transition before I got to insurance. It's just nutty. And
see, insurance, though, you said the career of last resource. It's a career, though, that I know myself. I have saved so many people's lives because of it. So I wish people would, I get what your comment is, because I used to think the same thing before I was first approached to get into this industry 21 years ago. But at the end of the day, people watching or listening, if you don't have insurance and you're medically sound, get it. It is cheaper than what the value you're going to give your family is worth it.
I mean, take this as a complete, an utterance of kind of a bit of a joke, right? Because that was what somebody once.
Oh, of course, I knew what you meant. I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure that the listeners catch it the right
way. Making
way.
Sure the subtlety.
Yes.
Last night I gave I haven't done this in a long time. It's been a few years, but last night I gave a presentation to a small agency. One of my guests ended up becoming an agent and a manager, and she's got a team of about 30 people. And so last night I spent an hour and a half giving a talk about the career and, how much I love it and how good, how it was my rice bowl for my family for 30 years and all the people that we've helped and the absolute, I don't know what the word is, joy, empathy. There's a bunch of words I would try to describe it, of paying a claim check to a family and hearing their story about the person that died and what the money that they've left for them means to them.
Oh yeah,
and
it's huge.
I mean, insurance is such a great career. But the
It's
funny
not
part is,
easy though. It's not easy because again, back to the fact of the commission statement you made, right? Going from healthcare to consistent income. I get into this industry and everybody talks about, I was talking with a friend a few days ago. We all, he's getting cost of living increase every year. He's got healthcare, he's got a defined pension, blah, blah, blah. I got none of that. I'm everything. I got to do it all. And feast or famine.
real, right? It's real. It is
It's
feast.
real. But there's
I
a
think,
reason why we can make more money than they in their careers. They have consistency. We have adaptability and ability to continue to grow.
yeah, it's a great career. And like I said, 30 years. And I think in some ways, what I came to the conclusion is it's the career of last resort in some ways because it is so hard.
Oof.
And the fail rate and the numbers of people that I've recruited into the business and to see who remains. But the people that remain are so vastly grown. You're such a different person when you go through that process and you survive a few years in insurance.
Oh,
Makes you a better person.
oh my gosh. I can remember the first few years in the trials and tribulations. And when I got into the industry, I had gotten divorced. I was divorced. So I was
Oh,
literally with, I'm going through the school of hard knocks. And then you have one person that says you do it this way, and they've got the traditional broken way of transactional thinking. And then you have a person that's too much relationship. They're not enough ask for the
yeah.
sale.
At some
You
point,
know
you
what I
gotta.
mean? You gotta sometimes just say, if what I show you is a value, and is there any reason why you wouldn't do it?
Hmm.
Right? Just be blunt, right? So it is what it is. But it's a very unforgiving industry though, because they change the rates of what they pay you, at least in Canada, and I know in the US they've done that too.
Oh yeah.
They just make it really, really hard. And my point earlier was all these people are saying they get cost of living increase, they get all this stuff. I don't get that. I gotta go work more.
Yeah.
There's my cost of living increase.
Sometimes they reduce the commission, change the features, make it less attractive. Yeah, it's a dynamic industry.
And you think you know your client, and the people listening, I think that I know you, and you get insurance. And before I got more firm about the fact of budgeting and making sure people can afford what they get, right? Whether they're investing, because I do investments too. I do finance as well, investing and insurance. If they can't afford it, then either we dial it back. Better to have something than nothing. Than for you to shoot for the stars and you can't, and all you could afford was the moon, and then I get a charge back. But that's a thing for another day. Those frustrate me.
You don't want to lose that habit of somebody contributing monthly, right? So if
Absolutely.
6 months at too much is no good. It's way better to have 5 years.
Rather they
with a
have
little bit.
less and have something, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's cash, for those listening that don't understand, like cash-based insurance, where as avoiding term insurance, or they're going monthly into for in the US, you guys, your products are a little bit different, your IRA or your 401ks or whatever. Not to say that they're good or bad products. That's a discussion for another day. But doing something, always do something to protect yourself and your family. Always, right? And if you're a single individual, still protect your family. Because if something happens to you, can your family afford to, your unfortunate demise? Right?
Yeah, you don't want to leave people with that.
Yeah. So anyway, I got more great questions. Yeah. Hopefully, Ken, you grew up Catholic and were like me, even an altar boy.
Yeah.
That you drifted away from your faith and eventually ended up in Asia, where you discovered many other different religions, cultures, and belief systems. Why do you believe you, as do many, grow away from their religious faith?
It's a great question. I think we're kind of, for the lack of a better word, I use indoctrinated, but it's probably that's a little strong. But you are in that ecosystem, right? You're deeply immersed in a particular vein. And certainly I think, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even 10 years ago now, you're born into a faith, right? A particular belief system. And that's what you grow up with, and that's what you're taught. And for me, you went to school. So school was, faith-based really around the Catholic Church. Um, and you spend a lot of time in it. You're deeply immersed. And some religions, some churches, people are there 2-3 times a week. I interviewed quite a few number of people that end up church burned out. Now, for me, it wasn't a burnout. It was more, I don't know if the Catholic Church engaged me in a way as a youthful person, a person with questions and in that discovery mode. And, it was very old, I was growing up in, Catholic Church. We still had nuns and habits.
Me too.
So making that connection, to my daily life. And I think the way that I looked at the Bible, I never owned a Bible. I was never given a Bible. I was never taught to read the Bible. And then I meet other people that's all they do. The whole service is around the Bible. So it's interesting, being raised Catholic and just kind of letting it sit. But all the while watching my mother's faith never waver, right? Maybe my mom's faith just got stronger over the years. And, to the point when at her death, she was holding on to a rosary, saying, just thumbing through the rosary as she passed. I mean, her whole last days were just holding onto a rosary, saying the rosary, even though she may not have been even conscious at that point, in some ways, some level of consciousness, right? So that faith blew me away, the strength of her faith. But I also was exposed during that time. I have a really unique thing. I've lived in the largest Muslim country, the largest Buddhist country, the largest Hindu country, and I guess in the US, the largest Christian country. I also lived in one of the largest countries that has no God, no religion. So very interesting journey for me. 20 years in age.
You lived a buffet.
It was a buffet of spirituality. And and people who had only grown up in that vein. So just as believed, just as steeped in their culture. In some places, it's in the culture, right? You go to Indonesia and we have, staff are worshiping 5 times a day. Ramadan is a real thing and it affects the entire business culture. The whole seasonality of it is around the religious holiday. And Hinduism, in India and Buddhism in Thailand. And then Vietnam, basically no religion of, it's country, family, person. There's no God in that equation. So it affected me interestingly. And then, like I said, going back and watching my mom, I actually started a book called Dear Dad was my first book. And still that's in the cooking, letters to my father. He passed away when I was 28. And there were so many opportunities, business, like things that I did professionally that I would have loved to have called my father. Positive and negative stories and moments that you'd want to reach out to your dad, especially he's a business person. But somewhere along the way, that got kind of sidelined. And I don't know really how, but the Dear God got started. And I started writing, and I know it was connected to me visiting my mom and seeing the strength of her faith. And that was ultimately, and through a couple of other weird circumstances, that's the book I picked up to finish.
Well, and your mom was in her 90s, correct?
Yeah, she's 93 when she finally
I remember
passed.
reading something about that last night. And I have my mother is in her 80s, very, very religious. And I like how you talked about the different countries and their what they believe and what they don't believe.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, though, one reason I mentioned buffet is I treat my faith as a Catholic like a buffet. I don't like everything that they represent.
Oh,
that
yeah.
the Pope talks about.
Yeah.
I don't jump to another faith. I don't leave my faith. But as my kids were growing up, I encouraged them to. My one daughter at one point in time thought about being a nun. And now, but I challenged her, go research, go figure out some things.
I did. Want to look into it first.
Don't just look into being a nun. Look at other faiths. She read the Quran. She did many different things, research religion, and she'd come talk to me and ask me questions. And sometimes it would be a pang because of the learned program teaching of my childhood, similar to you, growing up Catholic, not giving a lot of, here's your hallway. Here's your horse blinders. Don't go outside of that. And I used to tell my kids, you need to figure out your own path. Did it hurt me
Right.
when they stopped doing things that I believed in? Sure. But that's
Mm,
their own identity. Just like each of those countries you talked about, that's their own identity, and they're
yeah.
right for them to live it that way. If
Yep.
we are a true, compassionate, kind world, we would stop judging one another. We would not have wars like we're having currently, and have my whole life there's been wars. But my daughter came to one day and said, I'm not I'm not Catholic. I don't even know if I'm Christian. I said, okay, you figure out you, right? Only thing I ever ask you is be kind, be humble,
Mhm.
and be grateful about life.
Be
Be grateful,
grateful.
have an attitude of gratitude, and be grateful for what you have.
Mm.
And it'll all sort itself out. Sometime in your life, you're going to decide that you want to be part of organize. For those listening,
Yeah.
air quotes, those
Air quotes.
watching, organized religion has its place, but it's also very programmable. It's very, and as you put it, indoctrinated. I don't think that's a
Hmm.
harsh word. I think it's a
Yeah, it's a
reality.
tough word. Yeah.
It's a reality of life. So I treat my religious life and my actual life like a buffet. I don't go to eat everything at the
Mhm.
buffet, and the stuff I don't like that I tried, I'm never going to eat it again. You don't have to. You don't have to.
Yeah,
You don't have to be a
absolutely.
Kool-Aid drinker and end up gone. You don't have to be that type of person where you have no direction or focus, that everybody
Mm,
else tells you what to do and where you need to go. You can be the ultimate version of you, living a buffet lifestyle, right?
I
I
love
honestly
that.
believe that, right? And that's the way I live life. I still go to my church and they'll say blah 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 blah. Why do I continue to be a Catholic? Because me leaving and going to become a Lutheran or Protestant, Muslim, Hindu, I don't care what it is. I'm just jumping from something else because I didn't like things and I didn't have the mental fortitude to discount
Mm,
it and just push it away. And I live a life of, if it ever gets to a point where there's more, where the good and bad of any
mhm.
organized religion, I tell people this when I coach them: the good and bad and what you're experiencing, if it hits 50-50, walk away.
Yeah.
It always should be higher on the good side than the bad, than it to be equal. If it's equal, then you're wondering 50% of the time, how am I going to feel today? And that's the way life is too. I treat my life
Mm,
like that. Associations with people like you, I treat the same way too. If every time we talked, 50% of the time I was going, I'd shudder. And 50% of the time I'd be like, oh, that was a pretty good conversation. No, no, no. 70-30. That's the way I live my life. I literally live it at a 70-30% with my
absolutely.
faith, my family, and my work, right? Buffet style, man.
I
But
love
I'll
it.
get off my soapbox.
Yeah, and sometimes, hey, sometimes you eat one part of the buffet and you might overindulge for 6 months and you won't touch it for 2 years and then you'll come back.
It's too much. It's just too
Just
much of a good.
even like spirituality. I think it's funny. Some people do come back to Christianity and they do come back to Catholicism. I think
The
when they
way
get
they
older
need to, the way they need to,
and
not
on
the
their
way they
journey,
were told to.
and that's it. They find it because they need it, or it's filling something that they want to fill, but it wasn't the part where it was kind of spoon fed to them. I think at that point. So yeah, and I think that I picked up. When I ended up writing the Dear God book, there's nothing religious about it. It's really me articulating my understanding of big topics around human things. There's 12 parts to the book. There's it's kind of organized in this 4-part structure. I called it 4 books. And the first part is Book of Self. And I looked at that as, my own mind, really. And I call it your yesterdays. The chapters in there are yesterdays, today's, and tomorrow's. And, kind of call that the battlefield of your mind in a way, right? Because everything, there is no such thing as yesterday. There is no such thing as tomorrow. There's not even really today. There's just this moment that we have that's real. And everything else is just either a memory or a thought. And so I call it the battlefield of the mind. It's really how you talk to yourself and that self-talk. The next part of the book was the book of others. And that was between me and another person, or yourself and another person, if you're from that angle. And it's acceptance, forgiveness, compassion. And I thought, as you deal with another person directly, one-on-one, these are, going in that with an accepting attitude, being compassionate, and, not carrying around hate or anger, and being a forgiving kind of person. I thought, mentally and for your own kind of godlike way, that's really the way to approach life. is to have that kind of interaction with humans, especially this kind of one-on-one approach. And then, kind of a more humanity approach or a group approach was, go out to the community, go out to the world, go out to humanity with love, have a loving heart. Karma was the other part of that. And karma was really leaving people and humans better than you found them. Every interaction you try to be, you're not destroying people or taking them down, you're lifting people up. And same, pick up your trash, leave stuff better than you found, leave stuff better than you found it, including people. And service was the other part. So love, karma, and service, and have a service mind, out to humanity, try to serve people. And, and that just takes away from self, right? It's the opposite of self, and it's thinking of other people first. And then the last one was as close to God as I got in the book. And that was God. So it's yourself, another human, kind of this humanity piece, and then whatever that spiritual spectrum language you would call, but I would call it God. And that one was faith, hope, and prayer. And I don't know really why I settled on those, but ultimately, it was the right combo. And prayer could be meditation, mindfulness, whatever if you're more of a universe person, it's different from prayer, but can be similar. And faith and hope. So that's the 12 topics that I had, 12 letters, and then each topic got 4 letters. For example, love. And this was me, Dwight, testing, my ideas with God. I'm like, okay, this is what I think so far. I've lived in all these countries. I got this wired. God, here's what it is. And so I was writing these letters going, this is what it is. I've nailed it. And so for love, it was, asking the question and saying, isn't self-love the most important? Don't we have to have self-love? Isn't that the love above all? And then loving another is possible, because without self-love, I can't truly love somebody truly in an uncorrupted way, because I'll always have a hole. It won't be a pure love. And if I can love myself and I can love another person, I can accept love. It's also, a lot of people that have a hard time accepting love, right? They will do anything to destroy a relationship because they haven't found self-love. And the last one is teaching love as a parent, and if you love yourself and you love others and you can take a good loving comment and be loved on, you can show people what it's like to be a beacon. You're at that point, you're already showing you're already teaching love by default if you have the first 3. But without the first 3, I don't even think you can really show love. You can't show somebody what it's like to be a loving person. And I think, and I wanted to draw attention to that one, just on this partly because people have got to learn to love themselves and accept themselves for who they are, and truly love on yourself first, and let go of other people's opinions about you and everything else. I mean, I think so even for your younger, like you said, you've got a varied audience, including younger generation. Find that self-love, look in that mirror, man, and tell yourself you love yourself,
But it's
warts and all.
you're never too old, though, even the younger generation. So my listenership goes into the 70s, right?
Yeah.
So so if you're somebody listening, it's never too late to give a heck about your life and start with self-love, to actually appreciate yourself, to practice,
man.
faith, hope, prayer. And again, like you mentioned, Ken, if you don't believe in prayer, whatever, gratefulness exercises are a form of communication for self-love.
I think gratefulness and prayer, like you could just exchange grateful and put prayer.
Whatever floats your boat, whatever you want to label things,
Yeah.
just be kind, be humble, be serving others. But again, one of the biggest things that I struggled with when I was a younger adult was loving myself. And really looking back at the fact, where did this come from? Where was my monsters in my life, and where was it created?
Yes.
Through associations of people, things that I read, maybe things that I heard. What were the things that were anchoring back my mindset from keeping me camped? So anybody listening, you don't have to stay camped. You can start climbing. You can start reading good books. Like you talked about, one of the things that popped into my head because of the self-love thing I'm a huge fan. And I just had a guy on that wrote a book and has a game that's focused around it. He didn't write the book, but one of my favorite books is The Five Love Languages. And
Yeah,
not
yeah.
about having a relationship with a woman or a woman having it with a man
No,
or
no.
whatever the case may be, whoever you want to love, you want to love. It's how do you give people, how do you fill people up? And usually my love languages that I'm strongest in are what I wish I was getting from people. Well, I had a
Oh
guy
yeah.
on here recently that wrote a book. It's a best-selling book, and he's got a game on how to adapt and actually utilize it and get better at the love languages. And one of the biggest things is self-love. The whole design of it was to make sure that you can do it so you're self-loving yourself, because how can Ken and I go out and help anybody if we don't like what we see in the mirror? Or if we are able to present, look at all the gurus out there, all the fake prophets or the fake educators or the
Mhm.
personal development world, or even like you and I talked about it with podcasters, the professional podcast guests, right?
Yeah.
Where's your originality of being you? When you're present, if somebody's
Mm,
looking, opens the doors of your life and looks inside, you're the same as you were when you were with Ken at the Starbucks. There's going to be a little different nuances, but are you the unique self? Whoever's listening, are you your unique self? If you're feeling that you're not, you're never too old, you're never too young. Just start, do the baby steps, pick up a good book,
absolutely.
pick up a good podcast, go listen to some of Ken's Jars podcast or listen to my podcast. And,
Yeah.
you know, there's the human condition is varied. And if you haven't figured that out from this podcast, everybody has different faiths, beliefs. Some people like prayer. Some people like just speaking to trees. And I don't really care. Speak to whatever makes you have some resolve of peace so that you can love yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Totally agree.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about your book, since you brought it up, it was farther in where I was going to ask, but it just
Yeah. Sorry.
no, don't be sorry. I like a conversation that flows
Yeah.
into where I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But
It
since
just
you brought it
flows.
up, yeah, it flows. You know, this all happened because you had extreme sadness over your mom, right? And you tore out a page, you wrote faith on it. Explain that journey. Like what was you at that point in your life? Like what were you? Sadness is one thing. There's so many other different gamut of
Mhm.
emotions and mental things that we're going through. And then you started writing that letter to God, right? That's now part of your book, but you put faith at the top. What made you put faith at the top?
Yeah. That was a kind of it's an interesting, it's another side story, but it comes back to another kind of a belief system of mine. And it comes back to this just doing stuff. Um, and commitment. So it'll take us into we'll open up another door, a little bit of another door on the conversation. I had the concept of the Dear Dad book, and that was a book I was going to use to write. And ultimately that would be my speaking book. That would be my transition book, being able to talk about my father and corporate and use that as kind of a platform. And and I was doing this traveling around flying planes, not flying planes, but a lot of time in airports and hotels. And at some point you stop reading, like I can't read anymore, right? I've heard enough. I've got so much junk in my head. And it becomes at some point, while reading is very admirable and there's a lot of great stuff around it, you're putting everybody else's thoughts in your head and you can't hear yourself. And at some points it's hard to distinguish who you are versus everything that you've read and everything you've consumed. So I stopped consuming at some point and I started to write my thoughts and to kind of just to get I don't know, to get a bearings or to get kind of a true north. And I don't really remember writing the Dear God stuff, which is really strange. I remember writing the Dear Dad books and starting the letters. And I wrote the Dear God stuff, and Faith was my first one out of the gate. And there's some photos. I remember taking a photo of my mom's rosary that I had seen since I was a child, and it was in her home. And I had that photo, and it just really struck me. Powerful image, of a crucifix, right, and the rosary, and it was all kind of a little bit like this, blurred out, but very strong image. And I think that was when I started writing that. But then I got a job. I had a crazy job, like a crazy job at some point. And all my personal stuff got sidelined. The only thing I was filling my head with was corporate. This objective, this thing, this event, literally 6 hours a day sleeping, working 7 days a week for I don't know how long, a couple of years. And I got spun out of that job into a very soft job. And, it's kind of like coming out of on Star Wars when they come out of hyperspace, it's like, you come out of hyper and everything comes into focus again because it's just a big blur. And then boom, you're stopped. And for whatever reason, I thought I had this idea. I want to play guitar. I've had a couple goes at it and I'm unresolved with this. This is like an unresolved thing in my life. I need to learn how to play guitar. And no matter how badly, I got to give it one more try. And I'm 50 at the time. And so I talked to myself, kind of a little contract. I'm going to buy a guitar, but I'm not going to buy a $200 guitar. I'm not going to spend $500. I'm going to spend whatever I want to spend, whatever just gets me excited. Then I see that guitar. And so, but I'm going to do that. I will make a contract 2 years. Every Sunday I'll have a teacher and I won't quit for 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, I'll make a choice. I'll sell the guitar or keep going. And that was a contract I made. So I really committed to something. And in a way, I don't think I'd ever done anything remotely like this with myself. So I ended up at this guitar store in California, and it was just shagnormous. And I was totally intimidated, immediately regretting all my decisions in life about everything I talked about the guitar. Right. I'm going around. It's intimidating. Right. And I don't even at this point, I don't even know how to hold one anymore. I've totally lost my confidence in this place. And I'm walking around, this one guy going from stool to stool, picking up guitars and playing them. Very confident, like a handsome rock star dude. And, just kind of got an eye on him every once in a while. I'd catch him somewhere and just walking around like a fish in a fish tank. And all of a sudden Dwight, I'm face to face with a guy. Like he's straddling a stool with the guitar this way. I can't get around him. And he's right there. And we're looking at each other like this, eyeball to eyeball. And I just confessed everything to him. Hi, yeah, I'm going to buy a guitar. I haven't played in like 20, 30 years and blah, blah, blah. And I want to buy a guitar for 2 years. And what should I get? And he just looked at me and goes, get the red one.
Get the red one.
Shit. What is he? Shoot. What does he mean? Get the red one. And he could just see my face. And he goes, the one you can't take your eyes off from across the room. The one you never want to let go, the one you want to hold. Get that one, the red one. And as soon as he said that, I knew exactly which guitar to buy. Like I was like, thank you. Turned on my heel, walked over to the wall, grabbed that guitar, walked out the store. The person I met to be my teacher ultimately kept telling me, after about the third lesson, he says, we should write a song. You should write a song the next week. Hey, let's write a song next week. And finally, I was like, okay, this is annoying. I don't even know how to play guitar, but he wants me to write a song. Then I remembered, I wrote a book one time. I got some book stuff. Let me go get my words out because I write lyrically. I write in ways where I'm pretty sure there's a song in there. So we went into my old notes from, I hadn't looked at these things in 2.5, 3 years, maybe longer. And there it was, this little stack in a manila envelope, scratches of paper that I'd written on airplanes, different colored papers, different times, different flights, different events. And there was faith, top of a page, scratched out faith. And then my letter to God, dear God, what is faith? I was totally puzzled. I mean, that was the start. The genesis was like my mom's faith was just so confounding to me. And so it was this whole letter. And by the end of that Sunday, we had the draft of a song. And he came back that next week and we finished my first song called Faith. And, I was just mind blown that I didn't even know how to play guitar, but already I was learning my first song. And I liked it. I liked the lyrics. I liked what it said, the message. And that began the evolution of writing the next song. And very quickly, I ran out of draft words. I ran out of these crumpled pieces of paper, and I started writing the book so I could finish more songs. And then I fell in love with the book.
Wow. The written word tied to song is so powerful, though.
I didn't know how to write songs, so I stole my own words, and they were there on the page. I mean, Dwight, it was weird. Like the choruses are there, everything is there. The song was in that letter.
So your
Waiting.
connection to to words became more powerful, though. Way
Well,
powerful, because like you said, you were stealing your own words. Well, they were your own words, but you took them for granted.
I and that letter was a song in there. I mean,
Wow.
there was a connection. The guy I met, and he's a great friend now, and he actually produces the audio for the podcast, is my guitar teacher. And he's the bastard son of a Filipino priest. He shouldn't exist on this planet. And he's just the most amazing human you would ever want to meet. Just the
Wow.
loveliest guy, and changed my life. He truly changed my life because his idea to write the song, if I never had the pressure to write the song, I never would have finished that book. I never would have wrote the book.
Things happen for us, not to us, right?
Uh,
So
so I definitely felt like it was happening to me when he kept saying, write a song, write a song. I gotta be honest. I was like, are you kidding me, dude? I can't even, it hurts to hold the guitar. I'm not gonna be writing songs. It didn't make any sense to me.
well,
But
you give the universe stuff, and it comes back to you, whether you think it's God helping you bring
I,
that person or the universe.
I
You were
there
getting in
is
touch with yourself, brother, and the universe brought you, God brought you, whatever what you needed, right?
it. The message was, I think the takeaway message from this is the commitment I made, and I put myself in that place of 2 years from now. And that's what I learned. I really learned the power of this. I mean, I've had some ideas of what it was up until then, but now looking back, really understand what I said and the message. It's real quick, just a side note on this because it's just on top of my mind. I'll let you kind of drag me back. Um, a few days ago, I had an idea with HR people. I want to take my jar podcast and bring it to the corporate world and bring it to an office. And I had an interview with an HR person in Vegas about a week ago. And at the end of the interview, so what I want to do is bring the jar, which is this jar of questions, these human questions, and bring it to corporate and do a roundtable and let employees kind of interview themselves and share. And my concept is when you see the humanity of the fellow coworker, you're going to be way, way more open and nice. Yeah, there'd be a lot less conflict at the workplace if I don't know you at a surface level, but I know he's a human. But so the point of this was at the end of the conversation, the HR guy said a very powerful thing. What would you like to get out of this? What do you want to do? And I said, and I very articulated said, I'd like to have a POC of about 5 or 6 people where we understand the value of this idea and it becomes very apparent. And I'd like to partner with you on that. So we had a great conversation with chat and we agreed to move forward and we're going to do some stuff. That night I went to dinner, and I'm a real believer in appreciating the moments, gratitude, right? Being grateful and recognizing things when they happen. So I said, tonight I'm going to go sit down I wasn't staying in a great hotel. I'm just going to go to the restaurant and have a steak. I'm going to go sit at the bar and have a steak. I'm going to celebrate. So I went, bar's full, packed, not a seat. And I asked the guy, I said, I'm just one. He goes, do you mind sitting at the end? I'll put a chair up for you. So he puts a chair up for me. There's 2 couples down the L on the long side, and it's really great, friendly bartender. She's just super, and she knows the 2 couples, but they don't know each other. So there's kind of cool dynamic. I talked a little bit to the lady next to me, not much. And at the end of my meal, I do what I often do, which is I have my business cards with a question from the show, Dwight. And I tell people, how about a question of the day? Let me leave you with a question of the day, something to think about. And these are great, they're powerful questions, and they're often really hit people hard. And so I open the cards up and, I give her a question. And the lady at the end of the bar, for whatever reason, super quiet. And so when I'm doing my shtick with her, she hears me and she says, I want a question too. Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. Okay. So that's a little bit awkward. Okay. So I give her one, her partner one, and then I give the next couple one. And then they're like, well, you've got to get one too. I never do that. I never answer the questions. So I'm like, okay. So the six of us all shared our question and then shared what it meant to us. And we answered the question and everybody listened. And at the end of it, they were all like, this is such a great idea. This is going to, and I was telling them why I was there. And they're like, this is going to work. Oh yeah, I've worked in corporate for 25 years. And I left walking down the hallway and I was like, oh my God, literally this guy manifested my POC for the dinner. I've been to 100 cities. I've eaten 600 meals by myself outside in the last 2 years. I've never had anything remotely like this. And literally, he manifested created it with those words. What would you like to get out of this? I'd like a 6-person POC. I went to dinner 2 hours later.
Wow. Things happen, right? Materialization of stuff just because we speak it out loud.
With intention, right?
Yeah. Well, intentionality is something that is so not thought of or practiced, right?
It's kind of, I love the way you said that. Intentionality is something we don't think about.
Well, it's true though, right?
It's so true. It's so true.
We just don't. We don't reflect. We don't sit back and, like, at night when I have a gratefulness exercise, I put myself through. I'm laying in bed and I pray and then I reflect and I have gratefulness. And the thing that's key is most people don't reflect. They don't reflect on what happened today. What would you like to get out of your day? In the beginning of the day, talk about it. And then at night, did I get it?
Yeah.
What do I need to do different tomorrow? And prep their mindset for them to wake up to have that type of day that they would like, that they want to get out of that day. Does it always work? No. But preparation is really, people say, oh, he's lucky. No, he's prepared. She's prepared.
No,
they put effort in. Like, luck is a loser's excuse for a winner's completion, right? People, they're so lucky. Yeah, you're an overnight success that took you what, 15 years? What? Oh, you had how many sleepless nights? Oh, Ken worked 7 days a week for a few years. Come on. People quit placing luck as a reason that others are achieving things that you don't understand. Ask them and have a question. Ask them. Open your mouth, remove all doubt, and say, hey, Ken, what did you do? How did you get there? Oh, wow, you put that much effort in?
Paint that picture.
Yeah, like quit labeling, because labeling others or having lack of appreciation for other people's what they've gone through, you literally are your self-love. You're killing it. You can't self-love yourself if you're envious. Envy rules your life and you're jealous. Jealousy and envy, you need to work on getting that out of your life, because that kills self-love.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because your personal value is not there.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So one of the things too, though, like you talked about, I was reading about that you got to a point, and we talked a little bit about this, but I'd like to talk a little bit more about this. You got to a point where you suddenly believed in everything and nothing at the same time. You were at that fork in the road, right? Talk about that.
The spirituality, yeah.
Yeah, back to, like, we've talked some about it, but I want to talk more about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there was a part, where I was adrift long enough. And this is before I started the writing. It was definitely before I started the personal journey, but seeing these different religions and seeing the connection or disassociation, even with my own spirituality, right? Because I was no longer I wasn't Catholic for a long time, what I didn't realize, I also wasn't Christian by the definition. of Jesus being, really believing in Jesus and having Jesus as your savior. And I wasn't Christian from that definition. So I was also, in a way abandoned by my own faith because I didn't fit in anywhere. I believed in God, but I didn't believe in the Catholic Church because that's a church. I'm not really a man-made religion kind of a guy. I'm more of a spiritual based. And boy, man, I looked around and I read the Giva, and I tried to understand, Hinduism, and I realized no, that wasn't me. I looked at Buddhism. That's not really religion. It's more of a spirituality. And I just I really lost contact with God. I would think because I was in search of a religion or a spirituality that would guide me. And so I really believed in nothing, not agnostic or not. I didn't believe in God. I didn't really have any faith or belief, anything strong guiding me. The universe was really not, I just thought about being a good human was probably where I was at. That was about all I was holding on to. The Bible's a really good handbook for how to be a good person, but I didn't understand the universe. I did not understand intentionality, even though I would like to think I would have thought I was way, way more evolved, but I was not evolved at all. I thought I was in another place until I looked back and I'm like, I had zero faith in anything. I didn't have faith. And it really was beginning to get back in touch with my words and writing those words and being connected with my own muse, writing stuff and looking back on it and going, I don't know where that came from. That came from me. I wrote those words, but they came through me. They weren't, I don't feel like they came from my head, my brain. I feel like they came through me. They're certainly my words and they're part of me. But there's more at work when you're in the creative process. I feel like there's more than just yourself involved, and it could be you're tapping into your subconscious, but it's definitely not a conscious level articulation of what I could write.
Yeah, it's you talked about the fact of you weren't sure where you weren't really Catholic, you weren't really Christian, you were the only thing you had was you had some faith. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the biggest thing about faith, like I have said this statement for years, fear knocked at the door, faith answered, and no one was there. And people go,
Mm-hmm.
well, that's too simplistic. No, it's not. If I have faith, the rest, whatever in life, whether I believe in organized religion, whether I believe in my family or I believe in people around me, I need to believe in me. I have to have faith cord centered to myself. So my core values have always been the same. My core values are three simple things: faith, family, work. People say, well, why faith? Is that because you're Catholic? Is you're Christian? Is it no? I have faith in myself, and then I have faith in humankind because I can have faith and belief in myself. And am I doing the right things to feed my soul? But back to that self-love and faith have to be tied together.
Yeah. Yeah.
They honestly do. Right. So I appreciate the fact of you sharing that. People, Ken is being vulnerable. Ken is sharing the things that have gotten him to where he is today. The biggest thing is, though, he's always evolving on the climb. That is the secret of life. Till you take your last breath. Even his mother taking her last breath, holding a rosary and praying, her faith was strong. That was what made her tick. That was made her life meaningful for her. It don't matter what I think her life was in regards to, I knew this person and this is her meaning. No, it's what is her meaning. She loved herself. Her belief system and structure was her faith in religion, but she had faith in herself because she was always holding, as you mentioned, that rosary is so powerful, that crucifix and everything that you experienced because of that. Powerful, but it all goes back to self-love, self-reflection. You got to love yourself before you can love others. Otherwise, you're living a life of facade, and then that causes emotional and mental trauma. It does. Don't be phony.
Oh
Be
yeah.
genuine, be whoever you need to be today, tomorrow, right? Like as you talked about as part of your book and the structure of it, right?
Yeah.
There's no promise for tomorrow. There's no yesterday's gone. Today is the present. Enjoy it and do one little baby step every single day to better yourself, to love yourself, to have faith in
Mm,
yourself and humankind. You will start feeling better every single day. And that little baby step will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you're struggling, reach
yeah,
out to people that can help you.
absolutely. I like that faith, hope, and prayer part of the Dear God book, right? It's funny how I kind of just I think I dumped those in the last chapter, right? Because that was only where that's where they belonged. It was ultimately because where they belong. The interviews that I did with the jar, it's kind of interesting. The people who have really survived through that, thrive through that. What I didn't know when I put those parts of the into that last chapter, I mean, faith, right? I love how you mentioned it's not just a spiritual faith. It's right. It's also a personal faith in yourself and other, like faith is a really interesting word,
Oh,
with and
yes.
without the capital. But I found if you have no faith, you have no hope. It's very hard to be hopeful if you don't have faith that either in God or yourself or fellow humanity, right? Because hope is it's like, I don't know, one's the light, one's the match, one's the candle. And,
Good way
and
to
then
put it.
prayer, yeah. And prayer becomes the visualization of that, right? It's the articulation of faith and hope that it's, prayer is meditation. It's communication. It's communicating with your higher self, right? Your higher self. It's communicating with this quantum field, this electrical field that we're all connected to. And it's a communication with your spiritual language, whatever that spectrum, wherever you'd be, whether it's God or Buddha or just the universe, right? Whatever you're communicating to. But faith and hope are the candle and the match. And you've got to have those together to find your way.
Well, you definitely do because at the end of the day, to believe in nothing means you
Oh
don't
God.
believe in yourself.
Oh,
You have to believe in something bigger than
oh,
yourself because even if you don't believe in God, come on, look out your window right now. Look at all the creation that's around you. If you think it just came to be on its own, give your head a shake, in my opinion, anyway. And if that offends people, I'm
I,
sorry, but I'm not sorry. All right. You gotta, there's something bigger than you. You're not the de facto standard, but at the core, like you said, the match and the candle, you have to have faith in
gotta
yourself.
have it.
It drives hope in
Mm-hmm.
humankind, mankind,
Yeah.
for those that are politically
Yeah.
correct, I say humankind. At the end of the day, just be a good person. Like I told my kids, if that's another thing I say to people too. At the end of the day, do you understand what the 10 Commandments are? Yeah. You may not believe in God. Take out
Yeah.
some of the things that are related to God in the 10 Commandments, but the rest are great rules to live by.
I like, yeah, you follow that, you'll be a good human.
Yeah, you'll be a decent human. You'll be light in your step. You'll feel better about yourself. You'll have
Hmm.
faith. You'll have like my core values: faith, family, work. You'll have your faith drives you. If you love yourself, you can take care of your family. You can love your family,
Yeah.
and then your work is without the other two. Work is just you're an empty shell on a hamster wheel. Go to
Oh,
work, go home, get paid. Really, what's
and
you're not in your deathbed going, geez, I wish it worked another day.
yeah, no one
No.
ever. That's a real thing. I have interviewed some death doulas, people who help people cross over
Oh, wow.
as a real like hospice people,
I know
but
what it are. Yeah.
they call themselves doulas. And it's a true thing, man. Everybody just the only thing people lament on their deathbed is just being at the office and not missing the human connection.
I wish I would have spent more time. I've talked to people that have, one of my friends, closest friends, passed away already 7 years ago this past month in October. And he just wished he had done things differently.
Yeah.
He wished he wouldn't have drank so much. He wished he wouldn't have smoked so much. He wished he would have spent more time with family. You don't want to be that person so tied up in regret. Like, do I have some regrets in life? I have moments. I call them life lessons. I don't call my stuff in the past mistakes or regrets.
Mm,
I try to always
no,
tell my brain, what was the life lesson? What did I learn? Oh, wait a minute. I didn't learn anything from that. Oh, maybe I need to reflect on that. What
you
kind
need
of
to
what
think a little. If
you know
sure
what
you
I'm
got a
saying?
lesson, sure you got a lesson. You may be too, you may be too proud to see it, or
Or
too,
pig-headed.
or
Proud is
I
a
was going to
polite
say,
way.
boneheaded
Boneheaded
to accept
idiot.
the fact. But nothing happens to us. Right.
Oh,
Everything is for us. Everything that happens. And this is such a powerful thing for people to understand, for me saying understand it, to accept it, to see it in your own way, because you have to see it. I can't help somebody see it, but
yeah.
things happen for us,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
everything is a lesson. And, for people to say that God wouldn't put people through suffering or allow those things to happen, uh, it's wrong. I mean, living, life to
You want
live.
free will? You can't have both. You either have free will or you have control. What do you want? Do you
Yeah.
want to be controlled by the universe or God or whatever you believe in?
Yeah.
Or do you want to have free will? Right?
Stuff happens, and it's what we do with it. It's turning those things into the lessons that they are, being humbled by being here on this beautiful blue spinning ball racing through
Oh
the,
my gosh. And realizing that we have a thin layer that protects our planet so that we have oxygen and gravity and all the other things that aren't available in other planets, and the things that you hear should force some ways for you to have gratefulness for this big blue ball, like you said, that we're on,
absolutely,
right?
we are. How
And the
lucky are
fact
we?
the fact that I'm blessed to have you to talk to you right now.
Yeah,
That
this has been a great chat.
yes, and I know we got to wrap it up soon. So, but anyway, it's been a fantastic conversation. That's why I really connected with you, especially when I was reading last night about your Jar podcast and 300 conversations deep and everything that you've experienced in life, and you've shared so much. And obviously, there's so much more. You're so much more in depth of a person than what we've shared in the last hour and a bit. So I would encourage people to check you out, check out your
Mm.
podcast. You're going to have a new podcast you're working on. You were mentioning, check out your book, and, maybe you'll finish that Dear Dad book. Who knows?
I,
But you know
oh
what?
yeah, we'll get around to it.
Connect with people. That's what this whole thing is, and why I got into podcasting. This isn't a money thing for me at all, Ken. This is just a passion
Yeah,
project for me. This isn't what I do to make money. This is an investment of my time. There's a cost involved to get it out. And
sure.
I've just met some amazing people such as yourself that make me always elevate my mindset. Always, right? And
Well,
it's a great
well, and
thing.
I hope your listeners really appreciate, Dwight, I, also as a podcaster and understanding, like we talked about earlier, most people stop at podcast 7, and the ones that make it a year, 80% of those stop. And to produce this thing consistently and to find guests and to do the production is hard work. And, you're doing a good service for the listeners. People
Oh, I
listen,
appreciate
and
it.
I appreciate you having me on and spending, 2 hours of your morning with me.
Yeah, I appreciate you, brother. It's been my anniversary of my podcast was November 5th. 3 years.
Oh, cool. 3 years,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
That is,
164 episodes, right? So you're
and
165.
you're producing, and you're producing the show. So, I mean, this is a real, I mean, that's not easy to do.
Well,
That's a real investment.
yeah, I put a majority of that. I put a lot of time in it. My own time is roughly 4 hours per episode, right?
Wow.
And then I set it up to a production guy that actually they don't produce it, but they check out the sound quality. They put the intro, outro, and they load it up to my YouTube channel because this will be live on my YouTube channel, and they put it up to the platforms. But I'm the one that does all the social media around it. I'm the one that I'm the one that does everything about it. All I do is I set it up to somebody so I don't have to use Audacity or any of these other software things because I don't want to. All right. I let them take care of the technical aspect. I take care of all the human aspect of it,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the effort
Yeah.
into it. So,
Yeah.
Ken, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
I would give a heck for every person you meet in the day. Don't take any personal human encounter for granted. They're all an opportunity to uplift the person you meet. That person behind you in the grocery store, definitely any service person you meet. We should all be extremely grateful for anybody showing up. You can hate the service. You can, you just can't complain anymore about service at retail stuff anymore because people are showing up. And I tell you, that's an amazing thing. God bless people showing up. And like I said, give a heck about every person you meet and try to uplift, say something kind, anything. Just show them that they're a human and you recognize them and you appreciate them. And you'll be surprised at how good you feel by making somebody else feel seen.
Yeah, everybody has value. Like nobody's a waste of a human. They all have value. You have to put the effort in to look and to listen.
Absolutely.
Listening skills are one of the things that we really need to do. Visual, but listen too. Time together.
If you look at somebody's eyes and don't take that greeting of hi, how are you, and turn it into an intentional question. Don't say it, mean it. Yeah. Hi, how are you really?
Yeah, exactly.
And you'll be surprised at what people will say.
Oh, it's incredible. Or like I taught my kids when they were younger, we'd go into a store and they'd go, "Did you mean that, Dad?" "What do you mean?" "Well, you said to that person, oh, you got a nice tie on. Oh, nice hat. Or, that's a nice necklace. Or that's a nice blouse you're wearing." And I said, yes, I was serious. You should never give out a compliment that's empty. It should always be genuine. You shouldn't be wanting to manipulate people for your own good. Yeah. You should be actually wanting to be genuine and be kind, because you could be the only thing they have kind in their day happen. And you could be the catalyst for change in their whole day.
You'd save somebody's life with a kind word. Honestly.
Oh, absolutely. So my kids do it now too.
Just don't.
As adults, they do it, right?
Oh, really?
Absolutely. Learn behavior. When I'm hanging out with them, giving a server a kind word, even though the kitchen's screwed up. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? That's not your fault. Stuff happens. Yeah. I appreciate the good service. But if the service sucks, I don't lie. You need to be genuine, right?
Yeah.
And if I see they're flustered, I may not say the service was great. I'll just say, I hope you have a better day. Right?
Yeah.
Just leave people with a kind word. They may never see you again. You may never see them again, but leave your indelible mark on society by being kind, humble, gracious, right? Be gracious to others. So thank you, Ken. Awesome. I appreciate you, brother. What's the best way that people can reach out to you, Ken?
Yeah, I think, look, I'm pretty Googleable. So you can just put my name, but you can put my name in there and you can find whatever pops up and go check it out. I'm still a fan. For me, my real love is the Jar, and that's the jar.live. And you can go there and find quite a bit about me, the book. You can see some of the episodes or links to the places of the episodes. So the jar.live is a good spot to go as well.
It's a good website, actually. I've been on it. So
thanks.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's stuff on there about your book too.
Yeah. A little bit about the book, a little bit about me.
A little bit of bio, which I gleaned off last night. So it was a good thing.
And links to the shows as well. So you can find the podcast there. And, I think there's 300 and something interviews that we've got done. Everybody can find somebody they can connect to.
But that's the case for anything.
Yeah.
You can I have listenership. My listeners go up on some episodes, down in another.
Yes.
I don't even worry about it anymore. One person gets the value out of this episode. It was worth my 4 hours. It was worth my investment of money. It's all good. One person I need to change every single day. And that catalyst of one person could change somebody else.
Man.
Right? Steam.
It's beautiful. Roller.
Oh, it is beautiful.
We have great little, we're little balls of energy having a human experience. Let's make it nice for everybody.
Fantastic. So we're going to wrap up the show. Thanks so much for being on Give a Heck. And I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.